Welcome to the Women's Show here on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Kerry Pollock, joined with Alison McConnell, and our special guest this week is Hibernian midfielder Rachael Boyle. Thanks for joining us, Rachael. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
We'll get the bad stuff out of the way then. How is the injury? Where are we on that?
There's progress there. I think it's been a long time. I think I'm 5-6 months post-op now, so starting to get back on the pitch and start running straight lines, which every footballer hates without a ball at their feet. So yeah, it's something that I'm keen to get pushing on with. I've got an appointment with the surgeon and see where I'm at, and then hopefully get back in more on the pitch and maybe start some ball work soon enough.
Yeah. When are you hoping to get back, do you think?
The physio gives nothing away. Yeah. He doesn't like to be too advanced with that, so I think we're looking at maybe the turn of the year, maybe be back integrated with the team, and then it's just a case of building up my training from there and hopefully see some sort of game time early next year.
Absolutely. The ACL injury, if I'm right in saying, it's a recurring theme in women's football as well. How do we go about what's the hurdles that we have to get over to prevent them from happening so often?
I think it's the research. Obviously there's a lot getting started now. I think with the magnitude of the players that have done the ACL, especially with the lead up to the World Cup, I think there was 30 something players that should have been at the World Cup due to this injury, which is really disappointing to see. So yeah, I think the surgeons are really cracking down and wanting to get the research done, but that's going to take years. It's not something that's going to get fixed overnight, so I think players need to take the medical advice on board. The loading's obviously a big issue with the amount of games that players are playing at such a high level. So yeah, it's all about appreciating the sports science and everything behind that, and basically looking after your body as best you can to try and nullify the amount of risk you've got towards the ACL.
You obviously were in the unique position coming back. I think you were only 2 games in after coming back from the birth of your second child. Do you think that has a factor too? You know, ligaments are soft and your body's in a different place when you're just trying to come back, and you know, for many of us who've had kids and the thought of going back to play elite sport is just mind-blowing. But do you feel as though there's maybe enough support if you're coming back in after going through such a
I think there is now, yeah. Maybe in the past there probably hasn't been that, as I say, the S&C support that probably you get now in the top teams. I think when I came back and I'd done my ACL, it was probably my fault. I wasn't fully fit. I was trying to get fit, which, yeah, as you say, the ligaments are laxed after the childbirth and things. So yeah, that probably played a huge part. But for me, my body felt good at the time, and I knew that if I just started playing games and training, then the fitness would come on top of that, which is what happened with my first child. Luckily I came back from her and there was no issue, so I just thought my body felt the exact same, and I carried on that way, and unfortunately it failed me this time, but yeah, we'll get there.
Was there ever any doubt in your mind? Did you ever think after, you know, going through childbirth or second time, thinking it's maybe just not possible to get back to a level of fitness?
Yeah, I think the doubts are still there. I think I was having that conversation with a couple of the girls in the training centre the other day. You just never know what sort of level you're going to come back to. It's always one of these injuries, you've been out for such a long period of time and you see everyone progressing, that can you get back to it? I'm hopeful that I can. I think in the past I've seen other players do it. I think the likes of Jane Ross and Jo Love, who I've played alongside in the national team, they done theirs and they were that little bit older as well, and I think I looked at them and I jokingly said to someone, if I ever done my knee like that, it would be me. I'm never coming back from that. But when it actually happened to me, my mindset completely changed, and I knew that I just wanted to get back playing. I knew that I wasn't quite finished yet and I didn't want to go out that way. So yeah, I'm fully focused on getting the recovery and getting back playing for Hibs.
Fairly challenging if you're running about after a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old as well. There's not much rehab going on when you go home.
No, there's not. I've got yesterday I was at my child's birthday party, and then I'm basically hot-footing it up to Meadowbank to watch the girls play. So yeah, it's full on, but I wouldn't have it any other way, to be fair.
Do you ever have the chance to switch off, Rachael, with yourself and Martin both involved in football in the house? Yeah,
I think at 8 o'clock at night when the kids fall asleep, that's me. I stick my programmes on the iPad and that's me sitting down and chilling. But no, it's full on. There's a lot of football, and the kids obviously take up a major part of our lives. So yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's
a lot of juggling probably too, both. I feel like, I mean, you were obviously involved in international football too, prior to the injury and prior to the birth of your second child, and Martin away with Australia as well. Like, you know, is that quite challenging, just juggling the time factor when people are away from home and there's international travel and you've got really young children to consider as well?
Yeah, I think it is, but the way we see it, and we always have seen it this way, that it's in all walks of life. Husbands can go away for work and women are at home trying to balance everything, and it's no different. It's just that sometimes it used to be that I was away and he was at home, and we always used to just basically see each other passing in the night and we'll see tomorrow sort of thing. So yeah, there was a lot of that juggling, but I think everybody goes through that, don't they? It's not just us, so you just have to manage it for the sake of the kids.
I imagine Martin would have been a good support for you too with the injuries, that serious injury of his own, before he knows what it takes when it comes to like a lengthy rehab and coming back.
It's always nice to be able to reflect on other people and be able to have that support and go to them and say, like, what's going on here, this is the stage I'm at, where were you? And yeah, I've definitely had a few conversations with him in terms of the injury, but yeah, we're just basically both focused on getting back. He's now playing and it's great for him, so I want to then reach that level as well.
And the kids showing any signs of wanting to get involved in football even at just such a young age?
My eldest daughter actually came to me the other day and said that she wanted to get back to football training. She'd done it during lockdown, liked playing, and then she kind of fell away from it, and she came to me and says, I want to go back to football training. So I organised for her to go to the local Dunbar club, and she went down with her little hip strip on and was so excited, and then as soon as the first game started, she says, I don't want to do this, Mummy.
Changed her mind.
So she changed her mind very quickly, and I looked at the time and I said, well, we can still make your dance class. So we were back in the garden off to dance class, but I'm hopeful for the youngest that she's a little battering ram, so yeah, there might be a player in there somewhere.
How important is that for you, Rachel, to have two little girls and to have these opportunities available for them at such a young age?
Yeah, it's massive. I think growing up, I never really had female role models. It was always the men that I looked to in the football. So for them to be able to turn on the TV, if it's a path that they choose to go down, to see all these females like exceeding and doing so well, and just being able to switch on the telly and say, I want to be just like her. It's incredible to see. And the fact that my daughter comes along to my games and she's starting to pick up my friends' names and stuff, and she says, Mummy, there's your friend, and she can see them on the TV when the games are playing. So yeah, it's incredible, and that's the kind of life that I want for them. I want them to be able to say, I want to do that. Whether it's football or in a different path, they need to be able to have that approach to life to say, well, nothing's going to stop me, and if other people can do it, then so can I. So yeah, it's huge.
That's the thing, you have to see it.
Yeah.
It has to be visible. There has to be an element where you can replicate what you're seeing, because, you know, this is probably the first generation where you can identify female role models within football. It's just not been a thing until very, very recently.
I mean, I never had that. I never had a dream of wanting to play professional football when I was young, because it wasn't possible at the time. So for young girls now to grow up saying, just like the boys at school, saying, well, I want to be a footballer. And it's an incredible thing. I still think you still need an education and you need a backup plan, because, as you say, injuries happen, life happens. But for me, it's an incredible thing to be able to say, from where we started to where we are now, the game is just expanding massively, and it's so exciting to see.
What was your catalyst then? Who was your inspiration for the reason why you ended up so into football?
My brother. I always played football with my brother. He was older than me, and my dad took my brother's football team. So my mum worked at weekends, so it was either I go with my grandparents or I go to the football, and that's basically where it started. And my brother was really good. He always let me join in with the boys, and initially I was the goalkeeper, and that quickly fell away. Didn't like that. So as soon as I got involved and started playing with them, they loved it, and every time he went out the park, it was, can I come? And he was always great. He would take me along, and that's where my love for the game fell into place. And I think my dad then got me involved and says, well, you can come and play for your brother's team. And I scored in my first game because he set me up, and I think from there it just kind of grew and grew. So yeah, it's always been stemmed from there.
That's really interesting. I think there's a really common pattern with girls who go on to play at elite level and professional level, that they play with the boys until really for as long as possible. I think sometimes it can be up to 12 and 13 you're still competing with boys. It almost seems to give you that perfect grounding, the good foundation. Obviously there gets a point where physically it's not possible, but it seems to give a really good grounding just ahead of going into puberty and a partner the ways almost.
Yeah, I think for me it was the player that had made me. I think you have to be quicker, you have to be stronger at that age. As you say, it obviously comes to a point where it becomes too much, and I think for me that hit about 13, 14. You could see the physical differences in the boys. They just got that little bit quicker and that little bit stronger. I always counted on the fact that I was quite sharp in the brain and I could see things happening before they could, so it kind of covered the ground a little bit. But then, as you say, it gets to the point. So I think now it's starting to change, because the standard of girls football from a younger age is getting better and better. So it might be in 10 years' time that we say, well, you don't need the boys because the girls are just as good as the boys. But I would always say to people, try and play with the boys as much as you can, because they will make you a better player. Makes you quicker, makes you stronger, and makes you want to fight. Because you always get the parents at the sideline, or the coaches, or the other players, the boys, saying, oh, they've got a girl in their team, it's fine. So you just want to kind of get that bit between the teeth and prove them wrong. So,
what about role models? Who was your favourite player growing up?
I always grew up watching Man United. I was a big Man United fan with the class of '92, so I always watched like the David Beckhams, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes.
Bend it like Beckham on that playlist.
Yeah. My favourite film. But yeah, always looked to them. I think from a defensive point of view, when I grew up going to Aberdeen games with my grandparents, used to sit and watch Russell Anderson play at the back for Aberdeen. So yeah, there was a few that I could look to and for inspiration.
Just so you mentioned Man United there, we've seen Emma Watson recently make the move down there. How important is that, and how crucial is that going forward into our next international tournaments, that we've got this talent there ready to go?
Yeah, it's massive. I think you can see the impact that she's had in the national team at such a young age. It's incredible.
17,
I think you can see the players that have done it in the past, the likes of Kim Little, Erin Cuthbert, they've all came in at young ages and just been on to have phenomenal careers. So I'm expecting no different from Emma Watson. It's huge for her development to go down to such a club like Man United. I think she was progressing through Rangers at a rapid rate, and Rangers have got an ability to produce young players, because you can see that Mia McCauley's coming through as well, and she's scoring quite a few goals at the early parts of this season. So I think it's impressive for Scotland that you've got these young talents coming through and you want to embed them into the national team as quickly as you can. I think she's done great, and I'm looking forward to seeing how she performs against England.
It's such a double-edged sword at times as well, though, isn't it? You think you don't really want all your players being cherry-picked, and they go down south, and then the league is weaker because you don't have strong players, but on the other hand, it reflects well on the league that you're producing players of that quality. I suppose you maybe want to get to a point where clubs are being properly recompensed if players go south. You've maybe not just got that yet in the women's game just now, but maybe if you get to a stage where you're getting decent transfer fees for players that you can then reinvest, is maybe the sort of level you want to get to.
Oh, definitely. I think I don't want to compare the women's game to the men's, but even in the men's game you still see the young lads coming through, and they get to maybe Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, and they say, right, I want to move down south, and that's the biggest league and that's who they want to be in. So it's no different for the women's. I think it's a phenomenal move for her. I think she'll absolutely thrive in that environment and getting that training and playing with these sorts of players week in, week out. But as you say, on a flip side, you want the SWPL to be as strong as it can be. I mean, there has been players that have stayed, and look at Caitlin Hayes, obviously flying last season and got the awards, and rightly so, but she's decided to commit her future at Celtic. So something's obviously going right in the SWPL to be able to keep players like that.
You must be able to appreciate it, having been on the ground level for so long, about the last season seemed to be the highest quality in the league. Did you feel that as a player? Obviously you've played in it for so long, but did you feel as though that the standard has really come up, particularly among that top three, where it just seems that there's so little between them? Yeah,
definitely. I think even just going back 5 years when I had my first child, I then came back from that, and I felt like I was seamlessly able to get back into playing. Didn't really challenge me too much, whereas coming back from the second one, I was thinking to myself, I can't be playing those top teams yet, like I'm not quite fit enough and ready for that. It's going to take a lot of training to get there. Obviously it didn't work out, but I think even my comeback from this injury, I am looking ahead to games and thinking, right, am I going to manage that one? Like maybe this would be a good game. So yeah, the top three are absolutely flying at the moment, and we do need to close the gap for the rest of the teams. But as we say, the competition last season was incredible, and it just made it so fascinating, not only at the top, but you had the bottom as well. So I think it was such an exciting league to pay attention to and be a part of. And yeah, I'm hoping that it's much and such the same this year.
Do you feel as though it's got faster?
Yeah, aye. Yeah, definitely. From, as I say, I started in the women's game about 15 years ago, and the progression has been phenomenal. So yeah, it's definitely got a lot better and a lot more physical. I think the training helps. The fact that teams are training a hell of a lot more throughout the week. You can see the difference in quality, and the fact that we're bringing in foreign players as well to just add a little bit of spice to the league. It just gives you a different dimension to deal with. So yeah, it's exciting.
If someone had said to you 15 years ago, you know, that there'll be an opportunity for professional contracts, that there'll be a drive drive for professionalisation within the women's top flight, that games will be screened on Sky Sports, that the championship trophy will be covered live in its journey to its eventual destination. Would you believe the game was capable of covering that amount of ground so quickly?
No, not so quickly. I think that's fairy tale thinking from 15 years ago, wasn't it, from where we were at? It's just been incredible to see. I think last season, especially when you watch the teams battling it out on the last day of the season, I think historically it's always been decided before the last day. So to be able to sit there and watch and see everything unfold, and Fiona's driving about in the car, and it was good comedy value to see her doing that. But yeah, I really enjoy the fact that the game is expanding so quickly. I think we've still got quite a bit to go in terms of development of the league, but certainly from where we were to where we are now, it's huge, and we just need to keep that upward trajectory.
Spoke about the kind of physicality that we've now got in the game. Just speaking on the top three teams there, how difficult is it going up against them? What do they do that teams really struggle with?
They're so dynamic, I think. They're very different when you come up against them and your analysis on them. You can see the different qualities that they've got, and I was just at the Hibs Celtic game yesterday and I watched them play, and they're so direct. Like, they take their chances, they're so clinical. I think they had maybe 3 or 4 shots on target and they've took them all, especially in the first half. So good. And whereas Rangers, they like to keep the ball and they don't let you need it, and they move it and wait for their moments. And then Glasgow City are historically very dominant in terms of they're ruthless. They don't allow you to get anything. So I think it's so fascinating to see the different teams and how they adapt and how they perform so well. But as I say, for the rest of the league, we're trying to close that gap. And for Hibs, it's disappointing to see, because we were one of those teams that everybody was trying to catch, and unfortunately we've kind of fell away from that. So it's about rebuilding that process and getting that mentality back that we can actually compete, and it's about building that character again.
I suppose so much of it does come down to that, a question of belief, like properly having the mental fortitude to believe that you can go and compete and properly challenge these, and it's maybe easy to do it over an isolated game, maybe harder to do it across the length of a campaign.
Yeah, I think there's a core group of players that are still a part of Hibs that were in that teams that were competing with Glasgow City on a all fronts basis, whereas now we're starting to bed new players in and basically allow them the beliefs that they can be a part of that team that gets them back up to the top. I think we've maybe had the wrong characters in the past, but we're starting to get that transition of players now where we feel comfortable that we're gelling together as a good squad. And I think the performance showed yesterday that your goals down and the character to come back 3-0 down and you get back 3-2, and unfortunately again Celtic being clinical, they take their chance. So I think the belief is starting to come. It's just about getting performances on a consistent basis.
You've got both City and Celtic now going out for Champions League games on Wednesday. They're going through this fairly convoluted process of qualification, but do you think it's important for the league to maybe try and have that exposure to get into the Champions League? One, financially, because of what it brings back, and then the trickle-down effect of finances into the league as a whole, but also just for the exposure?
Yeah, definitely. I think as a player, that's the competition you want to be a part of. I know from my own experience, as soon as you qualify for Champions League, your full focus goes on that. That's what you're looking forward to, and that's what your family's ready for. So yeah, I think for them personally, it's an incredible opportunity for them to showcase their abilities. But as you say, financially and for the league, it's massive, and we need to have that 2 spots every year now. I think I don't want us dropping the coefficiency. The more teams we can have playing in the European competitions, the better. So I'm fascinated to see how they get on, and I hope they do really well.
It'll be interesting too, because if they are competing on a two-pronged front, you think that's maybe the time, that's the weekend where you maybe want to be playing them as the weekend after, because you see it repeatedly across Europe when teams have had European games and then they come back that weekend, that you struggle obviously with what it takes out of you and what it demands physically of you.
I think mentally as well, the emotional toll it takes on you. You build everything towards that game, and then it's a bit of a come down to then come back and maybe rock up to somewhere and you're thinking, oh, here we go. But no, I think it's teams and characters within the squads that will know how to handle these occasions, and I think they'll get the best out of them. As a club, I think we were looking at it saying, well, they've got Champions League midweek. We weren't sure what sort of team they were going to put out, but Celtic put out a strong team against us, which shows the respect that they had for Hibs as a club. I would like to think that Fran was sitting in the changing room telling them to get the job done as early as they could to ring the changes, but it wasn't to be the case. So yeah, they've had a tough game, and they'll know that going into midweek. But I'm sure their squads well prepared and they've done their homework.
He's a real character, Fran. I think sometimes I get the feeling that maybe the perception out with Celtic is maybe that he's not regarded quite so warmly outside other clubs than he is in his own. He just seems so kind of effusive and bubbly.
Yeah, I'm sure it's one of those where you hate playing against them, but you want them part of your team sort of situations. Yeah. But no, I've always had a great relationship with Fran. I don't know him personally, but he always is the first one to come up and say, hiya, how are you, how are you getting on? And I actually said hello to him yesterday before the game. So yeah, he seems like a lovely guy, does his homework on teams, and he's getting the best out of his squad. So what more could you want?
Just an interesting point you made earlier, Rachel, about those big teams being able to adapt, going through different competitions. And you get it in the men's game as well, Alison, about the different pitches that players need to play on. We were speaking about it earlier, about the AstroTurf pitches. It causes injuries, both women's game and the men's game. How do you find it as a player playing on that?
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of AstroTurf pitches, but I'm used to them now. We've played on them for years now. I think it's well known in the women's game that the majority of games are AstroTurf. But when you get the opportunity to play on grass pitches such as Easter Road, Tynecastle, all these sorts of great venues, and you then don't want to go back to AstroTurf. We went through a phase where we were training at the training centre on grass, and it was great. We absolutely loved it. And then obviously the winter nights come in and you're back onto the AstroTurf, which yeah, we're used to. As players, we understand that that's the case. In Scotland, that's where we're at right now, but I would like to see the game progress to the point where we are using the club-owned stadiums on a more regular basis and not just for the one-off big occasions.
That seems sensible. What's it been like to play at Easter Road? Because up until recently, that was a record domestic attendance.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's probably been my favourite venue to play at so far, especially with Hibs. I think we've played at Bayern, we've went to Prague, and for me, playing at Easter Road, I think more recently the game that I played in when we won 3-0 against Hearts, that was probably my favourite game to play in domestically, just because of the occasion, the record that we had at the time, and the noise was incredible, and it's something that we're not really used to on a weekly basis. So to have that occasion was really special, and to see my family in the crowd was really nice.
Do you think it's plausible to aim for playing more games at the traditional stadium, the home of the club stadium, if you could maybe, if you can seesaw between the men's home fixtures and the women's, if you can somehow shoehorn them in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know the ins and outs of what's required behind the scenes, because I don't, but I think you have to look at the fact of the security and getting the stadiums opened up and the turnstiles and all that sort of thing, the financial cost that that's going to have on the club, whether we're then able to bring enough money back in to facilitate that, I'm not entirely sure. But for me, I don't think from a playing surface point of view that the women are going to cut up the pitch too much, because it's not as physical, I don't feel. It's a lot more technical and tactical, so I don't feel like it would cause too much trouble to the pitch, and the ground staff might have something else to say. But yeah, I don't see why we can't strive for that, because it happens on the one-off occasions that we see, and it's 2 or 3 times a season teams are starting to use the stadiums, and it makes for a much more entertaining product for
You've
people to then tune in.
You've also seen people really come out, you know, fans have embraced it, like when games have been in home stadium, you've seen decent numbers, good crowds.
Yeah, well, we've obviously had it, I think, with the Capital Cup, where it's fully funded and fans can come in for free. It really helps to just attract some fans in and allows people the opportunity to come to the stadium and watch a game and watch their club, whether it's men's or women's, that they support. They then come along and see that they enjoy it, so hopefully that then attracts them to come back. It just makes it that little more difficult if it's smaller venues and the kids haven't got as much freedom to run around. But when you look at Celtic Park and they've got the Green Brigade coming in and really elevating the game, and what an occasion that was, and I think the spectacle of the game matched the crowd that they had. I think it was a fascinating game to watch and something that people really enjoyed. So I think the more visibility we can get on that, then it's only going to grow the game.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's have a look at the results from the weekend to see how everyone got on. We've got Glasgow City 2, Hearts 0, it was Spartans 0, Aberdeen 3, Hamilton 3, Dundee United 5, Motherwell 3, Montrose 1, Rangers 1, Partick Thistle 0 and Hibs 2, Celtic 4. Alison, just picking a few of those results there. Rangers 1, Partick Thistle 0, 3 points nonetheless, but were you surprised it was such a small...
Yeah, I think Joe Potter has touched on a theme that was maybe a commonality to Rangers last term too, in that they're creating a lot of chances but maybe not just putting them away. I think they've really missed Jane Ross when I think she's due back quite soon, but I think they really missed a proper goal scorer in the team, someone just with a very clinical edge. I think you would have expected the margin to be wider, and I say that with the greatest of respect to Partick Thistle, because I think they've made a fairly solid start too. But I would like to think it maybe points to the gap narrowing between the top three and everyone else. I'm not sure if that's a fair assessment, but I certainly think for Rangers, you've seen a real element over the last 18 months or so where they control games without properly putting it to bed, without really the scoreline reflecting the dominance that they've had in the game.
In Glasgow City, Rachel, 2-0 over Hearts. It was an OG that gave their first goal, but it took them till 75 minutes to get their second. Is it important that teams below the top three are still pushing them to really go for it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it needs to happen. I think for the rest of the league, that gives you the confidence that you deserve to be there and you deserve to compete with these sort of top players. I think Hearts will probably be disappointed with how the game's unfolded, but they'll know that they can bounce back from that next weekend with a positive result if they can. So I think Glasgow City need to make sure that they just get the job done. They just go about their business very quietly and they don't blah too much whether they win or lose. They're very even ground, and I think that's down to Leanne Ross and the way that she manages things. So yeah, it's good for the league. You want to see small score lines. You don't want to see massive 10-0s and 9-0s and things. It just loses interest. So to see the scores be so close, especially with the Rangers Partick Thistle one, it's fascinating.
We've got some more exciting fixtures to look forward to. We've got Montrose and Spartans, Partick Thistle, Motherwell, Aberdeen, Hamilton, Dundee United, Rangers and Hibs and Hearts. Alison, lots of exciting fixtures to look forward to.
Yeah, I think the standout one is the Edinburgh Derby this weekend. I think there'll be quite a lot of intrigue around that one, and of course it's a fixture that attracted good attendances and good numbers last season, so we would hope to see the same again this weekend.
Rachel, you must be looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah, I am. I can't wait for it. I wish I was being a part of it. I'll be on the co-commentary, but yeah, I wish I was on the pitch. I think it's always a fixture that we look to. I think for the first time in a long time, Hibs are probably going into it as the underdogs. I think Hearts have started the season really well, so they'll be full of confidence, and it's about us going there and taking points off them. So I'm hopeful for a good crowd and a good spectacle.
Definitely, we hope we can get that. Well, we'll have some more fixtures to look forward to next week. Thanks to Rachel, thanks to Alison. We hope you can join us then. Bye bye.